Be warned, as with the first part, there's a lot of pedantry to follow. If that's not your thing, well then this video is not your thing. With Ant-Man and the Wasp, I won't mention the issues with the density like I did in the last video, because they're just repeats of the issue established in the first film. This sequel is going off the broken rules from its predecessor, so the issue still falls on the first film. But just know that they shrink and carry like tens of cars in a briefcase, they shrink an entire building and carry it around like luggage, or there's the classic flying on an ant's back, which would all not make sense with what was established in Ant-Man for its rules. In the first scene after the Marvel logo, we have Scott playing with his daughter, Cassie, and he built a slide or something that they both slide down, and they hit the fence around Scott's place, and his foot manages to break through it and stick out. And Scott is in house arrest, so his ankle monitor is sticking out. I have no clue why an ankle monitor would alert the police if Scott was like 3 inches away from the boundaries of his house. Even if I believe the technology in the MCU can detect when he's only this far from where he should be, the police should not be alerted unless he actually leaves the premises of his house by a lot. Otherwise, it's wasting the police's time anytime Scott has to get his mail or something. It's very stupid, and it's used as a contrived way to introduce Scott's house arrest. The fact he has only 3 days left for his house arrest, and introduce Wu as a character who will cause conflicts in this film. Now, even though I don't like the way Scott was used in Civil War, I do appreciate that this film works off that in a way that makes some sense. It makes sense for Scott to turn himself in after Cap breaks him out of the raft, considering he would want to be with his daughter, and he can't be on the run if he wants that. Unfortunate that that's coming off of Scott being out of character in Civil War in the first place, but I digress. The exposition from Wu to explain the extent of Scott's house arrest is insufferable.
Well, your daddy went to Germany and drew on the walls with Captain America. And that was a violation of Article 16, Paragraph 3 of the Sokovia Accords. Now, as part of his joint plea deal with Homeland Security and the German government, he was allowed to return to the U.S., provided he served 2 years of all 3 years of probation. And waiting on Okay, sweetie.
I know the film has to recap the events of Civil War in some way, in case someone watched this film without seeing that one, so we understand why Scott is in house arrest, but it's just so lazy to outright explain all of it for no reason.
Tonight, the quality of dialogue stops mattering.
Especially when the events of Civil War are mentioned throughout the film, because of how mad Hank and Hope are at Scott. Speaking of which, apparently Hope and Hank are being hunted by the government too.
Because it's only a matter of time before we get them. It was their tech, so they violated the accords too.
You what?
Which makes no sense. Scott stole Hank and Hope's technology to use it to aid Captain America. Hank and Hope didn't violate the Accords at all. Why the fuck would they be hunted?
I just had a really weird dream. I was back in the quantum realm, and I think I saw your wife.
It's weird that Scott mentions that he was back in the quantum realm in the dream he just had in the bathtub in such a casual way, considering he didn't remember anything at all from the quantum realm at the end of the first film.
Scott, please. You don't remember anything.
Hank, I don't.
Scott and Hope are inside the car and they're small, but they're not wearing helmets. I suppose if this was a car especially made by Hank to be shrunk, and it has the same capabilities as the helmet to protect the subject's brain, it's fine.
The process is highly volatile. If one isn't protected by a specialized helmet, can affect the brain's chemistry.
I mean, the doors aren't open while the system is engaged, as Hope puts it, so this can work if the car can never be exited while they're small, or if you can't roll down the windows while it's small, or while it's changing sizes. So, as long as that's consistent, it's all good, man. We have some birds pecking at the car, and apparently they leave a huge dent when they do that. A normal-sized car wouldn't have such a big dent from a bird pecking it, so why does the small one? Does Peyton Reed think shrunken things are more fragile? I mean, Darren Cross was hit by a ping pong paddle into a bug light and hurt himself, so maybe? But wouldn't that mean that the train toy in the first film should have hurt Darren? Anyway, Hope kidnapped Scott because she thinks he's the key to her and Hank finding Janet in the quantum realm. So they left an ant at Scott's place who can replicate his daily routine so the feds don't notice he's gone. But for some reason they don't let Louise know. Scott doesn't even think of calling him, despite the fact Louise could very easily freak out and blow this ant cover they have if he's not in the loop with this plan. Scott also says,
I don't remember seeing Janet down there. I wish that I did.
In reference to the quantum realm, which is, again, weird wording if he doesn't remember anything at all from down there. as was the case with the first film. He'd probably just say, I wish I remembered what I saw when I was in the quantum realm instead, because that would make more sense. Now we come to one of the biggest problems I have with this film on an enjoyment level. This film's comedy is insufferable. We cut from Hope doing her black market deal to get a component she needs, to Scott wanting to eat peppermints that Hank left in front of them too.
Sonny Burch. He traffics in black market technology. He's been getting us what we need to build the tunnel.
Can I just have one?
Or earlier, with Scott's lines about being friends with Captain America that serve no purpose and seem very weird to be said.
Captain America. That's what we call him. If you're a friend, I'm not saying I'm a friend of how little I know him.
In this film, Scott is turned into a funny MCU guy, rather than being a character with an actual brain and personality like he was in the first film for the most part. It's definitely in the running to be the most remarkable case of flanderization in the MCU. And it's a shame because Scott was great in the first film. He was just the right level of silly, funny everyman.
I'm gonna make some tea.
What I'm saying is that was the right level, the right way to do things, and that this movie, Ant-Man and the Wasp, is certainly not the right way to do things. And by right, I mean W-R-I-G-H-T and not, yeah, alright, you get it, it was clear in the script. Anyway, Hope's black market deal does go wrong, and she had to fight everyone to get the part she wanted to buy. And it makes no sense for Hope to ever become big when she's so much more agile when she's small, and her punches are way stronger, as was established in the first film.
You have the force of a 200-pound man behind a fist 1/100 of an inch wide. You're like a bullet.
I don't know why Wasp runs away from these people trying to hit her instead of taking them out, as she's so fast and agile and strong that it would surely save her time and get her to her objective, which is the briefcase, faster. I also don't understand why Sonny and his men take so long to start running. They just stand and watch.
It's a pleasure doing business with you, Sonny.
Why does Wasp still pay Sonny after he tried to kill her?
Are you stupid?
Anyway, Ghost shows up and steals Hank's lab, and Hank says,
You got the lab.
despite the fact that Ghost's voice is clearly a woman's.
Give me that now.
Obviously, this isn't a big issue. They clearly just forgot about this line when modulating her voice. It's just a bit silly. A silly goof, if you will. Though it does mean I can interpret this as an edgy bit of characterization. Hank choosing to misgender somebody he doesn't like the boomer he is.
Hey, what's up with the fancy pastry? We gotta keep the food budget down.
Well, what are we supposed to have for breakfast?
The oatmeal packets.
It's insult.
Why is it an insult?
Because it tastes like sand.
The jokes with Louise and the gang are also insufferable. It's just them arguing about irrelevant and stupid shit, just as the stakes get high.
We got bigger fish to fry.
Is that my desk?
Yeah.
Why do I have such a small desk?
Well, because you weren't there when we were choosing desks.
You snooze, you lose.
It's not creative or funny, especially when Scott is, in his own words,
Hey, I'm risking everything by being here.
so I really don't know why he's focusing on this goddamn desk. Scott is supposed to be smart. He used to be a hacker who was able to take down some huge rich person who was stealing people's money, or even break into Hank's house and safe through his ingenuity. I mean, he has a master's in electrical engineering, but here he is wasting time when he knows he should be focusing on getting back home so he doesn't jeopardize being with his daughter again. It's hard to care about any conflict in this film when the characters constantly undermine their motives and goals for the sake of a joke, or as we'll see later, for the sake of some cool action scenes.
No one's gonna recognize us.
What, because of hats and sunglasses? It's not a disguise, Hank. We look like ourselves at a baseball game.
Just because you acknowledge this is stupid, it doesn't excuse it, though. 300 people with basically no disguise just walking around in the open. Their disguise is so shit that Morpheus realizes who they are straight away, which honestly makes sense, as they enter his classroom calling a lot of attention to themselves because they're not trying to be covert for some reason. This is likely the film making fun of the same disguise being used in previous MCU films, and in those it worked just fine. And so, you might therefore argue that within the MCU, it is somehow a viable disguise. To that I say, no it's not, it doesn't work here. Scott, person within the MCU, recognizes that it is a stupid disguise. Morpheus sees through it, and somebody else sees through it and calls the whole FBI on them. So either it's stupid here because it's a stupid disguise, and so therefore also a stupid disguise in other MCU films, or it's stupid here because it's inconsistent with it being a viable disguise, as established by the prior MCU films.
That's like 16 walls.
You're the one who's on the run from the FBI, all because you had to grow to a size that finally fit your ego.
That wasn't me in Germany.
Why the fuck does Morpheus think Hank is still the Ant-Man? Isn't it a known fact that it's Scott, considering he was arrested for fighting the Avengers and he gave himself up, and Hank and Hope are his known accomplices? I'm very confused how Morpheus doesn't know this, though it is hilarious to imagine 70-year-old Michael Douglas among the lineup in Civil War.
My record, 21 feet.
Not bad.
You?
I don't.
No, really, I'm curious.
65 feet.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Huge.
65.
I really hate how long this film wastes on stupid jokes. Scott is the one who should be in a hurry the most because every second that passes is putting him in danger of not seeing his daughter again by violating his house arrest rules.
How about my house? I'm supposed to be there anyway, and Wu could walk in any second.
But he wastes time with stupid jokes, going on about how big he's managed to grow, rather than getting straight to the point, which is what Hope's trying to do here.
65.
If you two are finished comparing sizes, we need to figure out a way to track down the lab.
Again, they're forgetting that Scott is actually a character, not just a silly little guy. Oh wait, it's because they wanted a dick joke. I get it. Oh, in that case, everything's fine. Call it off, guys. They just had to get the dick joke in. God, I love this movie.
My will to live meter is flatlining, okay?
Oh, it's Wu.
Oh, someone must have seen me.
Maybe y'all should have gotten better disguises. I don't know, just a thought.
This is about you. They'd be in your house by now. What are you, 15?
What's the joke here? Scott likes to play drums, so he has an electronic drum set. I don't understand what's so immature about that.
Campus police says they ID'd both Pym and Van Dyne.
Maybe y'all should have gotten better disguises. I don't know, just a thought.
Before I turned myself in, I shrunk it down and mailed it to Louise.
You sent my suit through the mail?
Scott sent his suit in the mail to Louise before he turned himself in, and it baffles me how he would have managed to send it without ID or something. In fairness, Black Widow and the other fugitive Avengers could probably help him fake an ID to do that before he turned himself in.
What is it?
It's the new regulator.
Hank, what's going on with this suit?
Remember when they said in the first film that messing with the regulator can send you to the quantum realm?
I think this regulator is holding
Do not screw with the regulator. If that regulator is compromised, you would go subatomic.
And now they're allowing Scott to use a work-in-progress suit that doesn't have a properly working regulator, meaning he could be sent to the quantum realm by accident. The reason why they're in this school is so they can get Scott's old Ant-Man suit because they need an old suit design to be able to use its technology to find Hank's lab. But I don't get why Scott even needs to go into the school in the first place. Can't Hope just go and grab the Ant-Man suit if Scott tells her where to go and which backpack is his daughter's? So Scott just got big and opened the helmet. Also good for him that he didn't crash through the walls or ceiling like the Thomas the Tank Engine toy in the first film. And also lucky that he somehow managed to sit down and squeeze himself in that room, despite the fact he was standing up when he started growing. Otherwise, the entire mission here would be blown. Though obviously people should have heard him hitting the ceiling anyway, and come check here.
What are you laughing? Please, can you just...
Okay.
It's stupid that Hope finds this funny and not concerning, considering they need to get this mission done and as fast as possible.
Sorry.
So then Scott shrinks and opens his helmet. Now, I'm a bit puzzled over this. In the first film, Hank says,
Process is highly volatile. What isn't protected by a specialized helmet can affect the brain's chemistry.
And Scott does put on his helmet every time he grows or shrinks. But here he takes it off after having done so, which makes me think the helmet is only necessary during the process of changing sizes. But once you've already changed sizes, you can open it, which is confusing to me because obviously someone being smaller or larger would make them require oxygen to be filtered differently to them, which is what I assumed the helmet and the suit did, along with allowing you to shrink and keeping you sane. It even looks like a gas mask respirator type thing, as well as kind of like a pig? Just me? If that's the case though, that you only need to wear the helmet whilst you're shrinking or growing, then why the fuck is Scott trying to grow without his helmet on? He knows how dangerous and volatile it is. Also, Scott's helmet retracts without him pressing anything, which is very confusing. How does the helmet know he wants it to be open? Why does Scott take off the hood when he's in the room when a kid could walk in at any moment?
You can do it. You almost got it.
Hope, I thought you wanted to get your mom back. I thought you knew that if you were found out, the authorities would come after you. So you need to do this as fast and as covertly as possible. I guess you're fine with making fun of Scott rather than just completing the mission though.
You almost got it.
You can clearly tell this was ADR for Hope because Scott's reaction, and even Hope's face when she grabs the bag, doesn't make sense if Hope was actually making fun of Scott. I bet Peyton Reed saw this scene and thought it made no sense for Hope to allow Scott to waste time, so he wanted to make it a character reason, which was her making fun of him, which unfortunately also doesn't make sense. The silly little guy virus is spreading.
Let's go.
We just cut from the bells ringing to Scott and Hope outside the school, as if Scott wouldn't need to hide from kids running around in the hall or teachers going to their classrooms.
There goes the bell. You know what that means. It's time to continue sitting in the middle of the hallway. That was always my favorite bell in school.
Hiya, champ. How was school today?
Ha ha ha. All right, get your jokes out now. Can you fix the suit?
So cranky.
You want a juice box and some string cheese?
Oh my god, stop wasting time with these jokes. Can't Hank and Hope make fun of Scott with the van moving? Dear lord, at least close the door as soon as Scott enters the van. It also annoys me how Scott is tiny and then he asks,
"Can you fix the suit?"
And the next scene he's just regular sized Scott. And apparently Hank did fix the suit inside the van, no problem. It's the epitome of...
The show is a series of discrete bits. That one's over.
If I'd asked you, would you have come?
I guess we'll never know. But I do know one thing.
What?
If I had, you'd have never been caught.
It's interesting because Ant-Man barely characterized Hope, and Civil War neglected the fact she was even a character. So here they just highlight her not being in Civil War as a way to say, see, Scott didn't know if he could trust Hope or something, when we all know she should have helped Scott. And he should have told Hope about going to Germany. It makes no sense not to. It's like the writers think hanging a lampshade is the be-all and end-all. Anything silly can be excused as long as you point out that it's silly yourself. If only they had prefaced this movie with just a black screen and the words, "This movie's a piece of shit, guys," then all would be absolved. They've pointed out that it's a piece of shit, so it's not a piece of shit anymore.
Self-awareness does not absolve anybody of anything.
It especially would have helped if those two were involved in Civil War to characterize Hope post Ant-Man 1, and to explain why Hope is a fugitive in Ant-Man and the Wasp. But the MCU forgets Hope exists outside of the Ant-Man films. Kind of forgets about her in the Ant-Man films too, but we'll talk about that when it's time to cover Quantumania. This is the kind of moment where you could add a bit of character to Scott, where he could have said he didn't want to incriminate Hope or something like that, and that's why he didn't ask for her help. But all he does here is be charmed by Hope rather than saying anything at all about why he didn't ask for her help.
We're sure this is our shrunken building and not somebody else's, right?
Just take it, Scott. Come on, we gotta be fast.
Now Hope is fed up with Scott wasting time, but earlier she was making fun of Scott for not being able to grab the bag, and thus she was wasting time. I also don't understand Scott wasting time doing shit like this when he needs to focus on getting back to his house as soon as possible, otherwise he'll never see his daughter again.
We're sure this is our shrunken building and not somebody else's, right?
Why are you doing this bit? We're gonna die! Let's go!
The pacing of this film is awful. It's the epitome of, and then this happens. Kinda like About Time, but with a little more trying to tell a story and not just events happening. This film has barely any conflict, because the conflict changes from scene to scene, since every scene creates a new conflict, resolves it by the end, meaning we need to create a new conflict so there's a reason for the next scene to exist. So we end up not developing any conflict or storyline well enough in this film, and it feels like there are 5 plots happening at once. We're 42 minutes in and so many things have happened, but also nothing has happened? Nothing has actually been achieved, and we don't know anything about the plot of the film, because the main plot doesn't really exist. Is the main plot Ghost? Not really, since she's just an obstacle on the way to getting Janet back. Is getting Janet back the main plot? Not really, since that's resolved super fast and most of the film is spent trying to do other things. Is Sonny the main plot? Obviously not, but he's an antagonist throughout the film that shows up whenever the film doesn't have enough going on, which is especially clear in the third act. It's such a muddled film, it's so confusing. The first film, at the very least, was paced really well. It follows a pretty simple formula and structure for a superhero origin story. It sets up a heist the characters need to do, and then they just do it. It's not constantly piling on new conflicts to the story or adding unnecessary scenes and steps to the plot. The first film flies by when you're watching because it's paced well, whereas this film is a slog because it doesn't know what it wants to do. It doesn't know the right way forward, whereas the first film didn't know the right direction. Do you get it this time? I'm doing that thing again. I even said direction this time. Very clever, thank you. Anyway, it's the classic case where the first Ant-Man film feels more like a film.
Behold, cinema!
And the second film ends up being fucked over by studio meddling and trying to reshuffle the story around until the release day, which makes it an unfocused mess. Same thing happened with Iron Man 2 and Age of Ultron. It's tiring. Does Hope pass out from one punch? If Hope realized that Ghost had left her chamber, why didn't she shrink instantly? Or at least put on the helmet that would have protected her from Ghost hitting her. Scott as well, he had even more time to react considering he was hit after Hope. Again, they have enough self-awareness to realize Hope is the most competent one, so she needs to be taken out first. Otherwise, she would have actually reacted if Scott was knocked out in front of her. But they don't have enough self-awareness to realize Hope is competent, and therefore she wouldn't have let this happen in the first place. Or, more likely, they were aware of all that it wouldn't have gone down like this, but they were just like, good enough. Which is truly the mark of masterful storytelling. I know I've just written a banger scene when I'm like, whatever.
I doubt Hank has ever mentioned my father. They were colleagues at S.H.I.E.L.D. Quantum research.
The story Ghost tells about her father is so weird.
Until my father dared disagree with the great Hank Pym.
She blames it entirely on Hank, despite the fact that Hank had nothing to do with it.
You had him fired. My father tried to continue his research on his own, desperate to restore his name, so he took risks.
He fired an employee who then took matters into his own hands and took too many risks, then caused something terrible to happen. It's that guy's fault, Ghost's dad's fault, not Hank's. Hank didn't force this guy to continue Hank's research on his own. It's also funny because Hank later says to Scott that Ghost's dad doing that wasn't his fault, and that's the last mention we have of any of that.
Bill is filling that girl's head with lies. Elias Starr was a traitor. He stole my plans.
Which makes it super weird that it was mentioned in the first place. It's not like this becomes an interpersonal conflict between Ghost and Hank as characters, where she needs to learn to forgive Hank. It's not like Hank reflects on his obsessiveness, causing this ex-employee to die, which could make Hank feel like he has to save Ghost, knowing it was his fault. It's just mentioned and then dropped. Ghost wanting to save herself is a good enough motivation. I don't know why they needed to try to do a Mysterio used to work for Tony Stark kind of thing with Ghost and her dad, if the fact that this is personal and somewhat relates to Hank as a character is barely relevant to the film. It's like an illusion, or not even that, just a cardboard cutout of character conflict, and a really poorly drawn one at that. One that was crudely cut out of some spare cardboard box, and when it was cut out they clearly lost control of the scissors at certain points, so there's slits on the inside of corners that have no right being there, and the drawing on the front looks like it was scrabbled on by a child. What was I talking about again? But this just kind of exemplifies how Morpheus, being Hank's partner decades ago, just has no reason to be in the film at all. Because it's mentioned, but it's never actually relevant to the film. Except for like a handful of lines of Morpheus being like, "Oh, you, Hank, you are just like you were before." Which is, sure, that's dialogue, I guess.
I could tell he was scared.
Ghost's mom is a strategic genius by running out of the building with her back turned to her child. The child who kept wanting to go back and help her dad in the previous shots. She truly just didn't want to save her daughter. It's also hilarious that only Ghost survived that explosion.
When I woke up, my parents were dead.
It's funny how little child Ghost can put on clothes, sit on a bed, walk on the floor, but she phases when she tried to grab the teddy bear. Weirdly inconsistent powers.
But others at S.H.I.E.L.D. saw an opportunity in my affliction. They built me a containment suit so I could control my phasing, and trained me to be a stealth operative.
Ghost apparently was a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent for years, which is just so tiring how the MCU keeps retconning things having happened over the years with S.H.I.E.L.D. or with the larger world of the MCU. You'd think it'd be a thing we'd know of if Ghost was a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. Maybe an asset that Coulson tries to contact to rebuild S.H.I.E.L.D. in the beginning of Season 2 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Like he was contacting old S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, but I guess not. Or even just someone who Fury knew about, who he'd want to protect due to being an extremely valuable asset, with her having powers. It is funny how Ghost was a better spy assassin than Bucky ever was though, because she at least didn't get caught on camera killing Howard Stark.
She wanted to kill you, Hank, but I told her no, and that she should watch you instead. And sure enough, she discovered that you were building the tunnel.
So Scott's phone is ringing. I don't know why he didn't leave it on silent earlier, considering he was busy infiltrating a bunch of places and had to be covert. So he wouldn't want to call attention to himself in case his phone rang. So I like it's even a specific ringtone for Cassie that bypasses the phone being silent, because Scott says,
"I'm sorry, can you tell me who's texting me?"
Cassie, 911.
That's my daughter.
So Cassie was texting and then called Scott because she needed Scott to look for her football boots because she needs them for a game she has the next day.
I'm sorry, it said emergency.
Ava, I want to help you.
What was the point of this entire bit? Was it just for the joke? Did we just waste more time for a joke? Because Ghost just moves on from this with the conversation. There's no point to any of it. Well, I'm being a little facetious, there is a point to it. It's to set up that Cassie, her mom, and Paxton will go to Scott's house later in the film, which they need to be there because Cassie needs to be there when Wu arrives so she can lie to him and slow him down, so Scott has time to get home without the feds knowing he's left his house. It's a setup for a very contrived plot point, but who knows? Maybe it gives us the best scene of the film as a result.
Janet.
For the last 30 years, she's been down there absorbing quantum energy. We can extract that energy. We can use it to repair Ava's molecular structure.
That would rip Janet apart.
You don't know that.
Why would Hank think that would rip Janet apart? Also, Hank truly doesn't know, and we'll see Janet heals Ghost right after she gets out of the quantum realm, so it really isn't a thing that hurts Janet. So what's the conflict here? Both sides want to get Janet out, and both sides want to cure Ghost, and curing Ghost comes at no expense to Janet. What are the stakes?
I'm gonna stay here just in case I need your help.
This, once again, proves the point I made in the first part about the discs being able to tell what to shrink, somehow. It doesn't shrink the cables connected to the chamber, but does shrink the chamber itself.
You're gonna kill Janet.
I'd be more worried about yourself, Hank.
God damn it, Bill!
Why is Hank so flustered? Why does he think this will kill Janet? We have no reason to think it would kill Janet when nothing is explained. Does she need quantum energy to survive? If so, how does he know that? So, apparently the ants that Hank hid in the peppermint can free Scott, Hope, and Hank without being controlled by any of them, since Scott gives Hank the earpiece after the ants cut the ropes that were tying the three to the chairs. These ants should not be able to control what to do here. They would need someone to control them. It's also weird how Hope can just blast Ghost with her laser gun in her suit, and that knocks her back instead of Ghost phasing through it. It even knocks Ghost out of the fight for the rest of the scene. It's especially weird because earlier in the film, Hope had blasted Ghost with her blaster, and Ghost just phased through it, and it didn't affect Ghost at all. I guess we couldn't have the film move forward if her powers worked consistently. Whatever.
Going subatomic isn't something you can prepare for. It kinda melts your mind.
No, it doesn't. You don't remember anything about going subatomic. You didn't even seem fazed by it at the end of the first film after escaping the quantum realm.
What if she's forgotten about me?
When I was in prison, the only thing that got me through was Cassie. I could have been locked up for 100 years. I never would have forgotten her.
Wait, is this character? Have we finally had our second scene of characters actually being characters and talking about their feelings since Scott was playing with his daughter in the beginning of the film? Hope is finally allowed to feel something in this film beyond just wanting her mom back. She has insecurities which work perfectly with how the first film had Hope wanting her dad to be proud of her and her need for validation from her dad, which could extend to her mom, making Hope feel worried that her mom might not love her or even remember her, and that would make Hope never experience that validation from her mom, never have her mom say she's proud of her. Hope's one and only scene where she's a character in the two Ant-Man sequels. Louise, Dave, and Kurt are insufferable. When they're interacting with each other in the first film, it's fun to hear their banter. When they're being threatened and held at gunpoint, it's not fun to hear them making jokes that deflate any kind of tension from the scene. Especially when they're supposed to believe Sonny Burch is someone... that name. Especially when they're supposed to believe Sonny Burch is someone we should be worried about, and that he could threaten the well-being of our main characters or thwart their plans. But he's not taken seriously here or when he's beaten later in the film, which just makes it all feel hollow, since it implies he wasn't ever an actual threat at all.
I have learned from a friend of mine at the FBI that you are a known associate of Scott Lang.
I really don't understand how Sonny thought it was a good idea to go ask Louise where Scott is, because Sonny didn't know Scott wasn't at his home. He only dealt with Hope, because he apparently ran away, which he could only have done if he did it before Scott showed up. Otherwise, Scott and Hope would have seen him, but they didn't.
This isn't truth serum, because I don't feel anything. That was a lie. I do feel something. This is truth serum!
So they just established that truth serum is a thing in the MCU. Remember in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 1, when Coulson uses the truth serum on Ward?
It's a brand new and extremely potent truth drug.
So Skye could ask him anything she wanted as a way for Coulson to gain her trust.
Don't trust us? Ask him whatever you'd like.
But later in the season, we have Ward saying that a truth serum doesn't exist.
I could get Coulson to give you some of that truth serum.
I hate to tell you this, Rookie, but we don't have a truth serum.
Because Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. knew the implications of establishing the existence of a truth serum in the MCU, and that it shouldn't be done.
I thought Hope could have been my new true partner, but I blew it. I'm worried that I can't trust him, and he's gonna screw up again and ruin everything.
I know this is Luis's way of seeing Scott's emotions and not actual reality, but what he says does make sense with what this film was doing earlier, with Scott wasting a chance to be with Hope because he didn't talk to her about going to Germany. And this is what I was talking about in the first part, when I mentioned that Scott and Hope being so close off-screen is really annoying, because we see none of their relationship development. We see them getting together, them seemingly being very close off-screen after they've already broken up, and then they get back together and, by Quantumania, Hope and Scott are already super close and living a happily ever after together. We don't see any of the meaningful bits of how they got to this place. We waste so much time on Louise saying stuff unrelated to the actual story, and he takes away all the subtext from Hope and Scott's feelings, only for Sonny to get mad and actually try to get the info he wanted in the first place. This film is so annoying, I hate how much time it wastes. Half of it is just watching nothing happening. Sonny should not have let Louise go off like that. With that in mind, let's recap why this scene is happening in the first place. So Louise conveniently had to call Scott about a thing Scott forgot to think about in terms of planning one of their jobs with installing security systems, which was also, conveniently, extremely time sensitive, which means Louise had to go to Scott so he can figure it out. So that's why Scott gives his location to Louise, who then gets injected with truth serum and tells the location to Sonny, whose reasoning for being here made no sense. But that all happens because Ghost was also in the room, so now she knows the location. So Sonny decides it's easier to steal Hank's lab from the FBI than Ghost, so he calls the FBI to go arrest Hank, Hope, and Scott, and that's why the next part of the film happens.
That's like 16.
We had no way of creating conflict, so Peyton Reed contrived the problem with Scott's company out of thin air to get every player in this film in the same place. Also, Sonny calling the FBI is so stupid. If the FBI will take Pim's lab, Ghost will just steal it from the FBI. It'd be very easy for her considering her powers. Sonny will still need to go up against Ghost. This film is so fucking stupid. It's also baffling to think Ghost showing up in the room like that would go fine rather than Sonny's people shooting at her, considering they shot Hope without hesitation earlier.
Scott, what are you doing?
Shut, get away from that.
Scott, you can't.
I'm sorry, I don't know how much time I have. I need to fix the algorithm.
It's really weird how Janet, when she mind melds with Scott and takes over his body, seems to be aware of everything happening around here. She can fix the problem that turned off Hope and Hank's machine without needing to be told about it, knowing exactly what the problem was, which I just want you to keep in mind for later.
Trust me, after 30 years down here, I've thought about it a lot.
And this is especially weird because Hank's old designs, the ones he used to build this machine to try to get Janet, were designs he made after Janet disappeared, so he could try to get her back. But apparently she just knows how to work with all of these, despite never seeing them before.
Time and space work very differently down here. You have 2 hours. After that, the probability fields will shift, and it'll be another century before they align like this again.
It's funny Janet says this, but time passed exactly the same to her as it did to everyone outside. I think it's just a bullshit throwaway line that doesn't make sense to justify why Scott only spends 5 hours in the quantum realm between 2018 and 2023, so they can use it to time travel in Endgame. Though, at least it explains why this video took so long to come out. I said it would take a week to release this video at the end of part 1, but time works differently here in the quantum realm, so it actually took around a month. Blame Peyton Reed for this delay.
You're gonna see all kinds of lights, and it's gonna get really trippy, but then it's gonna turn black and silent.
I'll be fine.
You know, I'm just saying, because I've been down there.
Yeah, so you've mentioned.
Scott, you said you didn't remember. Why is the film not acknowledging that him remembering anything about the quantum realm is huge and brand new information? Why did you have him not remember in the first place if everyone and everything is going to progress as if he did?
Daddy?
Man, Cassie's actress is the best actress in this godforsaken film. Can't we have more of her, please? Why doesn't Hank just immediately regrow the building to help them not get surrounded? He can get in the car and drive away as Hope becomes small, shrinks the building herself, with Hank giving her the controller before he drives away, and so she flies away with it. This would also especially make sense since Hank has cars that can shrink, so he'd shrink the car when he gets in and he could drive away without being seen, and this could all very easily be avoided. You would also expect Hank and Hope to have checked the cameras in their building to see if the FBI have already gotten there before they leave the lab, but I guess they don't have cameras on their lab building despite how important it is to them. The film needed them to be fucked over here despite what would actually work with these characters. So Ghost shows up and she touches this dude's chest, I guess, which kills him. And she steals the lab, like I said would happen. Sonny's so fucking dumb to think the FBI could do anything. It's also weird that Ghost kills that FBI dude rather than just threatening him like she did Hank earlier. I know the film wants to make the point that her morals were corrupted due to working for S.H.I.E.L.D. for years, but surely she can just not kill innocent people. She didn't kill Hank despite her believing he killed her dad, but I guess he's a plot-relevant character. This is especially weird because it's after Morpheus told Ghost not to go after Scott's daughter because that'd be very bad. But he's okay with her killing random people, I guess. To be fair, they did establish this one FBI agent was also working with Sonny Burch. I guess they just wanted to make him a corrupt cop, so it was easier to let Ghost off the hook for killing him.
I'm sorry for lying to you, and I'm sorry for risking everything.
That is okay.
This is the kind of conversation that could have been had in Civil War, so Scott's character could actually be a character in that film, where maybe he didn't want to help Cap for a fear of losing Cassie, but she tells him he should, that it's important to fight the good fight and help the little guy.
I do some dumb things, and the people that I love the most pay the price, mainly you.
Trying to help people isn't dumb.
This scene is just good, honestly. I know, I couldn't believe it either. It shows Scott wanting to prioritize Cassie in his life and how hard it is for him to do things right in his life. Which makes sense after he almost got Cassie killed in the first film, after he got arrested for trying to do the right thing before the first film, and in Civil War. And it makes sense with the idea that if he had trusted Hope, she could have helped him. But he ended up hurting her and she paid the price for him not trusting her to come to Germany with him.
So maybe you just need someone watching your back, like a partner.
Well, she's made it clear that's about the last thing she wants.
Who?
Hope.
But also, Cassie's so adorable and her actress is unironically great. And her loving her dad so much and looking up to him so much, meaning she wants to be her dad's partner in fighting crime, is great and actually sets up her character in Quantumania of wanting to fight for the little guy like her dad always did really well.
Wait, who did you think?
Me.
You?
Don't laugh. I'd be a great partner.
And it also sets up Scott's inner conflict in Quantumania of wanting to protect Cassie more than wanting to help the little guy, despite what he says in his book, perfectly.
You would be awesome. And if I let you, I would be a terrible dad.
This is like one of the only good scenes in the film. It makes me think Paul Rudd locked every other writer out of the writer's room to write this scene. It's a shame that this setup is mentioned in Quantumania but just dropped after the first act because the film needed to do its big Kang spectacle, focusing more on trying to establish lore and shit rather than actually developing any character. But we'll talk about Quantumania in due time.
I think you should help her.
I wish I could, but I don't know how I can help her without hurting you.
You can do it.
This is all we needed in Civil War, but they couldn't bother to make him a character in that goddamn film.
You can do anything. You are the world's greatest grandma.
They even tie this conversation in with their inside joke of the trophy Cassie got him.
It's a micro treasure! Looks like treasure.
Oh, it is to me. This is the best birthday present you ever got me. I'm so touched you think I'm the world's greatest grandma.
That he loves so much he kept his suit in, and that Cassie brought to show and tell because of how much it means between her and her dad. This is actually substantive writing, well done characterization, a time the film is allowed to breathe and develop on a conflict and let the main character be a bit vulnerable and share an intimate moment with the person he loves most in the world. Did they lock Peyton Reed out of the room when shooting this scene? How did he allow this scene to make the cut? He didn't even make a joke or have the scene be undercut by unnecessary action. Genuinely, this scene feels so out of place in this film, but it's such a breath of fresh air. So Hope hid a shrinking disc inside her boot
to shrink that wall.
But she didn't hide her suit? Surely her suit would have been more useful to have on her. I also don't buy that she knows how to unlock cuffs with a hairpin. Where would she even learn that from? Her dad surely wouldn't have told her, especially as he's surprised when she pulls out the hairpin. Maybe Scott taught her during the time these two were together, which just makes me wish we had seen any of the relationship development between her and Scott. But this also makes me wonder how the fuck Hope hid the hairpin in her mouth without the cops seeing it. They were surrounded and then arrested immediately when they shrunk the lab. She didn't have time to take out a hairpin and put it in her mouth. Also, her plan to shrink the wall and leave is insane. Firstly, because the discs shouldn't be able to tell what a wall is to shrink, especially since it's connected to the entire building.
Ceiling could collapse.
So we run like hell.
15 or 20 agents on the floor. They're all heavily armed.
Not great odds.
But also, they even say there's no way they can get out by doing this, so at this point they should just wait it out and see if they can make a deal or something. Their hastiness is reliant on the idea that Ghost will bring Janet back and use her to cure Ghost and therefore kill her, but they don't even know that's the case, so it's not really time sensitive. But the film wants to build the stupid forced stakes. Also, Hank's disguise is awful. Every single FBI agent would be able to tell it's him walking past them, considering not only that he's a fugitive they've been after for the past 2 years, but also that he has a very swaggy and recognizable goatee. But this all happened because whenever something happens, within 3 minutes, it's back to what it was before. and they act like the previous scene didn't happen.
That one's over.
This film is so tiring.
Scott?
So she truly didn't have her suit on her for some reason. Where was her suit, even? In Hank's van? If it's shrunken, why not keep it on you, considering how important and useful it is? Clearly, the police didn't try very hard to see if Hope was hiding anything if she had a disc in her boot.
Excuse me, are we planning on leaving soon? Or are you two gonna keep staring at each other until they start shooting at us? Flashback. Hiya, champ. How was school today?
Ha ha ha. All right, get your jokes out now.
The suit is missing and so is the van.
How could this happen?
So they knew where her suit was despite it being small-sized. I guess Scott could have shrunken it to make it easier to get it to Hope. But this means Hope didn't keep her suit on her or a safe place, so it was probably in the van. So she allowed the FBI to get her suit and allowed them to have this kind of technology because of her negligence. So now Scott, Hank, and Hope need to find Hank's lab. But you might be wondering how they'll do that.
And put on a new tracker of sorts.
You what?
What? How does this even... What?
You want Pez?
No.
Cassie gave me this for my birthday. By the way, I love that suit.
Thanks, man.
I wish I had a suit. I would even like a suit with like minimal powers, you know? Or maybe even just a suit with no powers.
I'm watching nothing happening right now.
You know, if this was a story, this part wouldn't be included, stupid!
I'll help you find a cure when I get back. I promise. Together, we'll figure something out.
Good luck, Hank.
The fact Morpheus even understands Hank and tells him good luck makes it so weird to try to understand the stakes of this film. Apparently Hank and Morpheus will just figure out a way to save Ghost and keep Janet alive. So why should I be invested in Ghost's story? There's nothing at stake here. How the fuck did Scott survive this? Why is Ghost walking after Scott and not running or facing towards him? Hank just went to the quantum realm, aka was shrunken to smaller than an atom, without a helmet. Now, maybe the ship he's in can protect him, so let's see. Considering the lab is a building, and earlier they had to do some stuff for it to be ready to be shrunk, it's weird that they can just shrink the lab when Hank goes subatomic, but we can assume Hank activated everything needed for the building to shrink before he went down. It's a bit odd they can just carry the building with no problem, while it's all jumping around in the car, but we can assume this is a building specifically made to stand these things, considering it's made by Hank to be mobile, so I'm willing to accept it. This is the kind of sci-fi bullshit I'm okay with that I mentioned in part 1.
Bigger problems.
Man, Hope really is okay with killing Sonny Burch's guys throughout this car chase. Makes me wonder why she didn't just shrink them, rather than endangering a bunch of innocent people going about their day, who'd be affected by a fucking car chase with like 10 cars coming after Hope. Not to mention, if she's okay with killing, considering how strong she is when shrunken down, which was the one thing the first film didn't contradict regarding the density rules, and considering she can fly, she could basically just act as a sentient bullet and fly through anyone and everyone as she pleases. It's also interesting that Hope decided to do this car chase in the first place, rather than just shrinking her van and going to the rendezvous, because apparently this causes Hank's ship to lose its signal.
Signal lost.
What the hell are they doing up there?
And Hope surely knows that's a possibility if she worked on these machines with Hank, so she knows keeping the lab steady is the best thing to do.
You never said it was so beautiful, Scott.
That's because he didn't remember anything, Hank. Also, the quantum realm was nothing like this when he went in. Now, there are even bikers shooting guns as they chase after Hope. Surely she can just take them out with discs, or fly at them fast, or at least shrink so they stop shooting, since they wouldn't be able to see the van. Hope puts a lot of people in danger here. Also, Sonny is wasting a lot of men and resources and showing his hand to the police, who should have joined in on this chase by now to stop it, since he's now openly having his men shoot at Hope. While I appreciate she's using the discs to shrink the bikes, it's fucking stupid she fires one right as the bike drives behind the car. She's just wasting a disc and fucks over Stanley for no reason. From her perspective, she just destroyed this old man's car. Could you imagine having all that at your disposal? The laser blasters, the shrinky discs, and you're like, I'll throw a Pez at them. And a Pez dispenser that isn't even yours to throw away. It was Luis's birthday present. What an asshole you are, Hope. Ghost, ties Scott's hands with the seatbelt, but surely he can just shrink away and re-go immediately to get out of that, meaning he wouldn't crash the van like he does in like 10 seconds. If Hope had just shrunken and gone to the rendezvous, Ghost wouldn't have been able to track down the van and steal the lab. The entire reason she now has the lab is that Hope wanted to engage Sonny in this chase so she could have her strong female character moment. The one thing Ghost needs is this lab, but she puts it in danger by hitting a car with it, rather than phasing her hand through the car and opening the door. Why would Scott jump on the wipers? He knows Ghost could just turn the wipers on and fuck him over. Why is he so stupid? Well, it's because they want this little funny of man being flung by windshield wipers. I get it. Oh, okay. I guess Scott's stupidity caused this suit to get fucked over since apparently the wipers fucked with his regulator. Why did Ghost not phase through that punch? Oh, because then the scene can't progress? Yeah, I love it when characters' powers get forgotten about for the sake of moving the film along. It's like the film wants you to believe she's taken aback by one of the size-altering superheroes she's fighting altering their size. As we all know, Scott would never do such a thing, so it makes sense that she's surprised by such a development.
Nice.
Wait, how did Hope fly into the car? Are the windows open? Has Louis been shrinking with the windows down? Has all the good faith I've been giving this film just completely been destroyed? I really wonder how Scott using a truck as a kick scooter can catch up to a car that has an actual engine. Why not just sprint? He isn't injured or anything. Oh, it's because they want this little funny of big man using truck as scooter. Hooray. Did Scott just kick the car? Does he know he needs to keep the lab safe?
I need help. Ask. Oh, sorry.
Remember what I said about Anthony in the first film being a hollow emotional beat? Well, now Scott is killing a bunch of ants without a second thought. Anyway, the scene is just a way to create some stupid tension because otherwise it'd be too easy for Scott to get to the lab. So we need the seagull to chase Scott and pretend like he's in danger.
I had a dream.
Janet had said that going this deep in the quantum realm is very dangerous on the human mind, so it makes sense that Hank is losing his mind here. I wonder if this will be relevant in part 3. Anyway, it's also just like, not true. Scott was fine in the first film when he went into the quantum realm. Anyway, Janet stabilizes Hank's mind with her quantum energy, which I guess she knows how to do, and now Hank isn't wearing a helmet anymore inside the ship, but at least he's not in the process of shrinking, so it's fine. Janet even takes off her own helmet. However, I've been thinking about the helmets mostly in relation to the going insane bit, but surely when someone changes sizes, they should be required to keep the helmet on so they can breathe. You'd assume, like, one of the reasons why the helmet is important is that if you're small, you know, oxygen particles wouldn't be able to enter your body because you'd be like way too small or whatever. Like, you know, there's a reason why the humans are the size that we are, you know, that have the material, you know, have the molecular composition that we do. You know, because it's just survival and evolution and shit. And so when you become small, if you have your helmet on, you could argue like, oh yeah, the helmet like filters oxygen, it does something to, you know, be able to let you breathe. But in Ant-Man and the Wasp, when they become small, when they become big and shit like that, they can open their helmets, so I don't understand how they can breathe. But the worst part is, when Hank and Hope are in the quantum realm, they both open their helmets, and they can just breathe and exist fine. But they're so small, this could never ever happen. Like, they should never be able to open the helmet when they are, like, changed sizes.
Yeah, just keeping the helmets closed at all times when they're in the quantum realm, I feel like just kind of fixes that that issue, because you could just make assumptions of how oxygen, because you can just make assumptions of how like the oxygen works when the helmets are closed, like they have their own supply or whatnot. But yeah, fucking opening it in there is, it's so fucking dumb.
It does annoy me though that Hank manages to find Janet in the first place. She'd said this earlier in the film.
You have 2 hours. After that, the probability fields will shift, and it'll be another century before they align like this again.
But Hank finds her after the countdown expires. I guess he had already landed, and the probability fields are something you need to go through when descending, but not something that affects how you are once you're already down there. It's not like Peyton Reed thought this through, though. That was just an excuse to have a ticking clock in this film for it to seem more tense.
I'm not the same woman I was 30 years ago, Henry. This place,
It changes you.
It's weird that Janet says this like that. She seems to appreciate that she's been changed by the quantum realm, to be in awe of the wonders of such a place, based on her delivery of her lines and her face. And Hank is even smiling at the way she's telling him this. But the next film indicates the exact opposite for her character and what she thinks of the quantum realm. Like, the entire conflict of Quantumania is based on this scene being contradicted. Peyton Reed, more like Peyton read your own script.
She is a brilliant scientist. She may be able to help.
Oh, she will help. Right now. And if she dies, she dies!
No.
What are Morpheus and Ghost even fisticuffing over here? Janet is ascending with Hank anyway. Nothing Ghost does will change that, and she wants Janet to get back so she can steal her energy, so I don't know what Morpheus is trying to stop her from doing here. Oh, I guess the machine can connect to Janet through the quantum realm? How does it do that? Shouldn't the machine need coordinates? If it's trying to absorb quantum energy and it can connect to the quantum realm, why doesn't it just get that energy from any source other than Janet? Also, Ghost stealing quantum energy from Janet is seemingly killing her, but why does it kill her? The human body doesn't need quantum energy, not gonna lie. How can Hope keep hitting Ghost? Why doesn't she just phase through Hope's punches? The conflict comes from Ghost wanting the quantum energy from Janet, and they think it will kill Janet. Then Janet comes out of the quantum realm when she's entirely caught up with things and just mind melts with Ghost, right there and then, and they're both fine. Why didn't Janet, while possessing Scott, just say, hey, tell Ghost she can chill out, we can just mind meld when I'm back? Since Hank absorbed the quantum goo when he went down into the quantum realm, it could have been good if he sacrificed himself to save Ghost, and let Janet live to be with Hope, due to the stakes they set up earlier with Hank thinking Janet would die if they used the quantum energy to save Ghost. But there was no risk at all with bringing Janet back and her saving Ghost, so there weren't really any stakes in this film. That creates a whole other issue of why Ghost wouldn't just go down to the quantum realm herself to get the quantum energy so she could heal, though the fact Ghost's machine can absorb Janet's quantum energy while she's still in the quantum realm causes virtually the same issue, as she could just absorb it from anything else other than Janet. But the idea I mentioned at least creates consequences from the conflict set up in the film. Even if Janet didn't know about what was going on though, as she says, it's still stupid that she can cure Ghost, because it means everything is just fine and there was no point to the entire conflict of the film. Ghost was fighting for nothing when Janet just seemingly has the ability to cure her. Establishing this ultimatum that only one may live, Janet or Ghost, you are basically making a promise to the audience that a real choice will have to be made down the line. And so by just skimping out and not delivering on that promise, you're just, for lack of a better term, blue-balling the audience. They're gonna leave feeling cheated, and they're certainly never gonna be able to be invested in this film ever again.
If Ant-Man and the Wasp can do it, I'm not interested.
We're going to our jobs. You see, we see these guys, they're trying to shoot people.
So we apprehended them.
Sonny Burch and his crew were just not a threat anymore, because Louise, Dave, and Kurt tasered them and injected them with the truth serum, which completely undermines their threat, considering they were major players throughout the film, but it was super easy to beat them. If only Hope hadn't wasted time doing the shit car chase with them, then the third act wouldn't have happened. The film also just kind of ends. Scott finds a way to avoid the police, somehow. I guess Hope and Hank are still wanted by the FBI. They somehow were able to escape with their lab before the police raided it or caught them, despite the fact the police were already on the other side of the lab, so shrinking it would cause the same thing that happened earlier. Scott's house arrest is over, he's in a relationship with Hope, Cassie has the one line that carries over to Quantumania.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
I want to help people. Like my dad.
Scott's company is now fine because Kurt and Dave showed up on TV talking about the citizens' arrest they did with Sonny Burch and his gang. Ghost and Morpheus are apparently running from the police, and Ghost doesn't have her powers anymore, but they seemingly aren't caught. So I guess everything is wrapped up in a nice little bow. No reflection over what any of the characters did, no scene with Janet, Hank, and Hope talking so they can have a bit more character. The film just ends. It's kind of perfect that it ends like that though, abruptly and without any satisfying conclusions for any characters. Mostly just saying, this is how the characters exist for the next time they show up in the MCU, so keep that in mind. Because this film is extremely pointless filler, much like Quantumania. It doesn't develop any character. I'm pretty sure no character goes through an arc in this film, unless you count Scott doing the thing he would always do anyway, but being told by his daughter to do it, which is stretching it to say the least. I mentioned how Hope had a lot of interesting established stuff about her to work with after the end of Ant-Man, but this film just doesn't do anything with her. She's just a badass woman who don't need no man, whose relationship with her dad is perfectly fine, despite how the two had a very bad relationship for many years until the events of the first film. Hank is just there. I don't even know what to say about him. Hank and Hope want to get Janet back, and they do. And there's no reflection on what getting her back cost. Maybe their freedom, maybe their sanity, maybe their morals, as Hank was willing to let Ghost die to get his wife back. The film just cures Ghost, so we don't have any exploration of these characters. They wanted Janet, they got Janet. End of story. It's so shallow. The first film at least had some interesting color palettes, some pretty good visuals, and Scott was allowed to be a character. This film is all grey and uncreative with its cinematography, the CGI is awful, and nobody is a character. And that is not alright. You see, again, that's like the Edgar Wright thing, you know, yeah, alright. Anyway, it's peak Marvel sludge, and that's why I hate this film more than worse films in the MCU. It's just so pointless and hollow when it pretends to be telling a story, when it so clearly just has nothing to say. Half the runtime of this film is just nothing happening, with stupid jokes destroying the pacing or any sense of tension. I mean, Hope starts a goddamn car chase in the third act for absolutely no reason, and I'm supposed to care about it? Peyton Reed thinks these people watching his films are 2 years old. They won't care that nothing matters or makes sense or is even a story, as long as we get funny Giant Man and funny Ant-Man and funny Mexican Man.
Fuck these people. How dare they think that them fucking around is worthy of your attention?
It's such a pointless film that Laurence Fishburne doesn't even remember being in it.
I'm an MCU guy, man. I love the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and as much as I would love to be in it, I'm happy being a fan and waiting for whatever's coming.
Before we move on, we have the mid-credits scene, which has Scott going into the quantum realm to get some quantum healing particles, which Janet is on board with and even gives Scott tips about going into the quantum realm. Almost like she's open about talking about quantum realm stuff, and even going to the quantum realm. Almost like her character in Quantumania is a contradiction of this film. Peyton, read your own fucking script.
Mic check, 1, 2, 1, 2. How's everybody doing tonight in the quantum realm?
Scott, we read you.
I really wonder how Scott can talk to Hope, Hank, and Janet when he's inside the quantum realm, considering time seemingly works differently for him, as established in Endgame.
Sorry, that must have been a very long 5 years.
Yeah, but that's just it. It wasn't. For me, it was 5 hours.
So his experience with time inside there would mean he wouldn't be able to transmit his voice or anything like that to them in real time, or even at all. He wouldn't be able to hear them, especially as time goes way faster for him in there than it does outside. It's also baffling that they're getting these particles for Ghost, but she doesn't show up in Quantumania at all. Did they just get more quantum particles for her between Endgame and Quantumania? I'm guessing she was snapped, otherwise her quantum disease would surely have killed her between 2018 and 2023. So then we get to Endgame. Scott being pulled out of the quantum realm by a rat pushing the button that pulls him out is so fucking dumb. How does the van even have power to turn on the quantum gate? It's a van that's just been sitting there for 5 years without being touched, not to mention the level of contrivance that a random rat appears to turn on the machine. Now, Endgame has so many issues, and the way it explains the rules of time travel is very stupid, but the gist of it is that because time works differently in the quantum realm, the theory is that you can go into the quantum realm at a certain point in time and come out at another, and that's how they travel through time in this film. Basically, Scott entered the quantum realm in one place and left from another place inside the quantum realm, which was what caused him to be somewhat displaced in time. With that, we get to Hulk trying to send Scott through time.
I'm gonna send you back a week, let you walk around for an hour, then bring you back in 10 seconds.
Perfectly not confusing.
Seems pretty straightforward to me. Hulk will send Scott into the quantum realm, taking him out at another point, assuming his calculations are correct, then bring him back.
Guys? Oh my back. Time travel!
Oh, apparently Hulk found the Fountain of Youth. This will never be mentioned again after this scene, but the MCU has established the Fountain of Youth, which completely undermines the ending with Cap in this film, as Hulk could just de-age Captain America and he'd be back on his feet fighting threats. I cannot begin to describe how infuriating the scene is, but I want to let Tony explain it so I can shit all over it.
The EPR paradox. Instead of pushing Lang through time, you might have wound up pushing time through Lang. It's tricky, dangerous. Somebody could have cautioned you against it.
This is stupid on so many levels. The time travel works by sending Scott into the quantum realm and letting him leave the quantum realm at another place in time. Scott is traveling through space and leaving at another place in time. There's no way for time to travel through Scott, unless Hulk was manipulating time instead of just figuring out the coordinates in the quantum realm and where they lead you in time for you to be able to exit there. I know they wanted Hulk to fail, so Tony had to join in and help, but it makes zero sense with the rules established.
That's definitely a case of me just not knowing what to do with this.
Also, and I know this isn't just an issue for Scott or relating to Ant-Man, but since it relates to Pym particles, I think I can bring it up.
Pym particles, all right? And ever since Hank Pym got snapped out of existence, this is it. This is what we have. We've got enough for one round trip each.
Why would they plan so they can only do one round trip each, rather than using one of their trips to go back in time and get more Pym particles so they can take as much time as they want doing this? It's just so stupid that they only think of it when Tony and Cap failed to get the Tesseract in 2012. We also have this absurdly stupid moment where Scott shrinks after already being small. The entire point in the first Ant-Man film is that he couldn't shrink more without turning off his regulator, which would make him subatomic, which is why it's a big sacrifice when he stops Darren Cross. He goes subatomic to kill Darren and save his daughter. However, apparently he could have just shrunk after being small with no problem, which also means Janet could have done that when she went subatomic to stop the nuke decades before. It's so weird to me because I thought the point of the regulator is for it to know the minimum and maximum size you can be and not allow you to shrink or grow more than you already have. Otherwise, you keep growing forever or shrinking forever. Hence why you go subatomic. You shrink forever because the regulator doesn't stop it.
If that regulator is compromised, you would go subatomic as you shrink for all eternity.
But apparently you can shrink after having already shrunk, no problem. But this also reminds me of an issue with the first Ant-Man film that I just didn't bring up in part 1. I know I mentioned the discs being weird, but I can buy that the discs are encased in a metal thing so that it can tell how much to grow or shrink. Basically every disc having its own regulator. But there's a moment where Hank drops a drop of Pym particle on a device and it shrinks, just knowing how small it needs to be and just stopping shrinking on its own, which is super confusing to me, because it would mean that Scott shrinking forever when he destroys the Yellow Jacket suit, and thus going into the quantum realm, should be stopped because he's only taken a certain amount of Pym particle. He's not continuously being injected with the Pym particle, he only does it once, which would mean to me that the Pym particle itself doesn't know when to stop shrinking something, but the suit's regulator does. But apparently the particle itself knows, so it's just super inconsistent, and it takes away the stakes of the sacrifice at the end of Ant-Man, because now it makes even less sense, somehow. And this is what I have for now. Part 3 will come out sometime after Quantumania is out on digital, just so it'll give me enough time to work on the script, and because that film deserves to be torn apart with clear visuals. Sorry, Shang-Chi. That means that part 3 will probably come out in a few months. Part 3 will also talk about the Hawkeye show, because I was made aware that fucks around with Pym particles too, and I cannot be fucked to binge that show so I can talk about it in this video. But rest assured that I will cover it to complete the Ant-Man being inconsistent in other films and shows trilogy. If you want to see me talk more about media, I'd recommend checking out my podcast Ecom, or the streams I've been doing with Madvocate playing Lego games, because we talk about a whole lot during those.
Where do I put this?
Just up your ass. Ooh. Got him.
I don't think Hulk's booty hole is that big.
I'll see y'all next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.